Welcome to part 2 of the charity and ethics topic. Today we're looking at the goal of charity. Before we kick off, can I ask you what you think the goal of charity, the aim of charity actually is? So let's move on to the next slide. This is the basic principle we agreed in the last presentation. The goal of charity is to reduce the suffering and increase the well-being of others. Or very simply, to make the world a better place. That is the purpose of charity. Why do we need charity? Because our world needs improving. We have big social and environmental issues. We have issues like poverty, hunger, climate change, all kinds of huge problems. That's why charity is required, because the problems of the world, some of them are intractable. Some of them need a lot of effort to solve. Hunger, poverty have been with us since the beginning of time. We still live in a world of poverty. We still live in a world of hunger. That's why we still need to do charity. So is all charity good? That's a very simple question. What do you think?
Because I think you talked about how charity is short-term help, so it's not long-term.
That's a good answer. So charity is a short-term fix, but it may not solve the underlying problems. You want to help, but you shouldn't help. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes. So I intend to help him, but it's not helpful.
That argument is often used about international volunteers. Some people argue that international volunteers, they just want to have an exciting experience by maybe digging a well in a foreign country or teaching children in a poor country, but they don't actually want to solve the problems of that country, and they're not necessarily skilled to do so. And in some cases, they cause problems in those societies, in those countries. Let's look at some of the arguments against charity, because normally, if you ask somebody, is charity good? Normally, I think most people would say, yeah, charity is good, it's a positive thing. But sadly, we all know stories of charities that have not only gotten involved in bad charity, but they've actually been involved in scandals. Thinking too small. You mentioned, Chihiro, short-term help. Targeting the symptoms and not the causes. So, for example, if a charity, a homeless charity, decides to go to Tokyo and bring a can of hot coffee to the homeless people living in Shinjuku train station, they're not fixing the problem. They're doing something good for that person at that moment, but the next day that person will still be cold, possibly very hungry, and nobody is solving that problem. So the argument is that charities think too small. Do you think it is always possible for a charity to target the cause? For example, world poverty. Is that something a charity can fix?
Yes, we can have a mission to solve the famine which is happening all over the world.
For example, we have the United Nations. They're not a charity, of course, but they're trying to tackle causes, and they're not successful. With all the money, all the resources, the worldwide presence. Let's look at the next slide. It's an argument that we should do what we can when we can. So this is an argument against the accusation in the last slide. Should we donate now to save a life now, or spend our money on a better world in 10 years' time?
That's difficult. I think we should spend on a better world in 10 years.
So if there was a hungry child in front of you, and you had 2,000 yen, and that 2,000 yen would buy rice for that child for this month, and somebody said to you, read this report. This report says if you give me 2,000 yen now, we can save our money for 10 years and solve the problem of hunger. Would you ignore that child in front of you? It's a real difficult dilemma. Charity can become a substitute for justice or change. For example, in Japan, child poverty is a real issue. It's become worse over the last 10 years and probably worse over the last year. There are charities in Japan like Second Harvest who support poor families with food, and some people say, well, shouldn't the government be doing that? Charity can become a substitute for justice, but maybe there is no other choice. Maybe, as you say, relying on the government to solve, for example, the homeless problem in Shinjuku train station, they haven't done it yet. Maybe they don't have an appetite for this. Maybe they don't have the skills. So the other argument against charity is similar. It fails to change society. If charities didn't exist, maybe the governments would be forced to act. It's a very good argument. The government do have money, but for example, would you prefer to give your money to the government or to a charity to address issues such as child poverty? Who is more accountable for that money? It depends on the country, it depends on the government, but that is your perception, that charities are more accountable for how they spend their money. I don't know if the government would even have the same support from its people to solve these problems. If somebody said to you, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, child poverty in Shizuoka has grown and there are a lot of children living in poverty, and somebody said you can put 10,000 yen into the Department of Finance bank account, or you can put 10,000 yen into the UNICEF Japan bank account, which would you prefer to do? For example, in Tokyo we have a homeless problem, but we also have the Tokyo Olympics, and the government wants to build an Olympic village for the athletes. So they have to decide, do we solve the homeless problem or do we build an Olympic village for the athletes? We can leave the homeless problem to, for example, charities, and we can build the Olympic athlete village. So the argument against charity is that a charity is benefiting the state more than the needy. So today we have universities, we have hospitals, we have orphanages, we have ambulance services, but in most cases they began not with government ideas and government initiatives, but by charities. Are you aware, Makoto or Chihiro, of any essential services in Japan that began like this? So the basis of the argument is that we can make bad decisions with our charity. As long as our intentions are good, we believe we're doing the right thing. But perhaps we don't give to the cause with the most need. Do you know who Bill Gates is? Bill Gates has a foundation. It's bigger than the GDP of some countries. And he donated some of his money to this private school children attend. And that's a donation. And he gets tax breaks for that donation. So you can understand how people would say, that's not charity. That's supporting private education over public education. Surely the public education system needs the money more. So you should pay tax. Do tax breaks work? Tax breaks are meant to encourage more donations. That's why they exist. The tax break idea is give more money to charity and we won't charge you any tax. But charitable donations in 2018 by the 20 richest Americans amounted to less than 1% of the total wealth of these people. Let's try to understand what is being said here. So the 20 richest Americans, let's say the Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos of the world, they didn't really donate a lot of money. They donated less than 1% of their total wealth. They donated a large sum of money, but in comparison to what they actually have, it's very small. So do tax breaks work? The case of the USA in 2018, it would have been far better if they had a tax on the 20 richest people, let's say 10% of their wealth, and used that money for charity, building roads, supporting hospitals. So why not tax the rich instead? Let's continue the argument against charity. So some people have a negative view of charity because of how charities use their funds, how they use their money. So there is an argument, the overhead argument. It means a charity shouldn't be spending their money on themselves. Office space, on salaries, on rent. And some people argue that charities should be giving their money to the people who need it. For example, Chihiro, would you prefer to give to Seibo, who commit to sending 100% of their money to Malawi, or to UNICEF, who spend 50% on rent and salaries? But perhaps UNICEF are more efficient with their use of money. Maybe they have better systems, but they also have high overheads. That might be a false argument, because maybe UNICEF can go to a country and say to the president of that country, do something. Sebo can't. So maybe they're more efficient than we are. Is it ethical to give a donation, to give money with strings attached? For example, the Japanese government or JICA, they will donate resources to a country like Indonesia to build a train station or a motorway, but they will say you must use a Japanese construction company. That's tied or aid with strings attached. Interesting. But if an Indonesian company could build the motorway for less money than the Japanese construction company, is this not doing the most good possible? For example, they can build 10 kilometers longer for the same money. You've changed your mind. Okay. Did you know half of all international aid is tied? Do you think it matches the goal of charity to make the world a better place? So, according to our answer to the question, should we do good, a little good, or the most good, we all said we should do the most good. But our aid, our international aid, our decisions, none of them match our words. Can you see this mismatch? It's happening everywhere. We give to charities we like, favoritism. We give to charities that maybe are inefficient. And our international aid is tied. The countries receiving the money don't have the freedom to make the best decisions to make the world a better place. So the goal of charity and how we do charity are not the same. So here's a question to Hiro. Are high overheads at a charity a bad thing? Which do you think then is more important for a charity? The percentage of overhead or the amount of good done? We all have our inherent bias. We don't necessarily pick the charity based on which one is good or which one is bad. And there's an explanation below the slide. The evidence overwhelmingly shows we are all biased by our own worldview. Would you spend more time choosing a partner for life or choosing a charity? I think everybody would say that. So the assumption we're making here is we put more time into decisions where we stand to gain or lose. We don't stand to gain or lose when we make a donation. We're not the people who are hungry. We're not the people who are suffering. So again, I ask, is the goal of charity to do good, a little good, or the most good possible? And I think we've all agreed it's to do the most good possible. Yet, we don't carry this out. Do you think most charities base their decisions on making the world a better place or doing the most good? They can be very successful without having to think like that. In most cases, what matters most is how engaging the charity's cause is, or how well known the organisation is. You said it, didn't you? You said if given a choice between a famous charity and a not famous charity, most people would pick the famous charity. For example, I'm from Ireland. I'm more likely to help people in my own country than I am to help people in a faraway country. It's the same in Japan. If there's an earthquake in Kumamoto or in Tohoku, people in Japan are more likely to give to their own people in trouble than they are to give if there's an earthquake in Iceland. I'm not criticizing anybody's choices. I'm saying if the true goal of charity is to make a better world, why are we not doing it? And a lot of times we donate or do charity for a personal reason and nothing to do with creating a better world. So the problem is our brains. I'm blaming our brains. We are biased towards helping people similar to us. We are biased in thinking the current approach to a problem is the best. We are biased because most of us don't put the time or the effort into making a real good decision on charity. If we are buying a new car, the average person spends about 20 hours researching engines and types and models and makers. But if it comes to donating to charity, they don't spend that time at all. How many minutes do we spend thinking of a charity? I think I'll give to this charity. I like the picture. I feel good. Boom. Done. I'm buying a car. Ooh, will I buy Toyota or Honda or Volkswagen? Which one will I get? And you look and you research and you read reviews online. You go to different garages. You test drive. And that's a car. And that doesn't make the world a better place, but your charity does. Why are we not putting the same effort into charity? It's because of our brains. So here's a question. If someone asks you to donate or volunteer, would you say yes because you want to make a difference, or yes because it feels good? Imagine you have money to donate to only one charity. One choice is to donate to an organization where your friend works that will help one child, or you can donate to an overseas charity in a faraway country where you can help 100 children with the same money. Which would you donate to? I think you're being very honest. I think most people would. If your friend said, there's this kid in Hamamatsu who needs our help, and you can give me 1,000 yen and we can help him. Or Makoto says, you can give me 1,000 yen and I'll help 100 kids in Malawi. Your friend will have more influence on your decision, probably. So this is what I mean when I say we all have bias. Here's another scenario. You see a news report on the television about human slavery. You are shocked this is happening in the world. You want to stop it and donate to a charity that can help. How likely are you to spend 5 hours investigating which charity you should donate to? So in other words, when it comes to big issues like human slavery or buying a car, there is more loss or gain in the decision to buy a car than there is in helping human slavery, because we're not directly affected by slavery. So we're unlikely to investigate which charity would best help stop slavery, and we're more likely to investigate longer hours researching the purchase of a new car, which sounds wrong. But here's the counter-argument. If the goal of charity is to reduce suffering and increase well-being, then it shouldn't matter if it's in Japan or Malawi.
That's true.
So they're both true. And this is the difficulty we have. It doesn't always feel good to do good. Sometimes it feels bad to do the right thing. Can you imagine having to choose Japanese people over Malawians or Malawians over Japanese? Sometimes doing charity feels bad. But if you agree that the goal of charity is not to benefit ourselves, but to benefit the world, then we've begun our understanding into the true goal of charity. That is our journey for today. We've come to the end of a lesson.